Imagine this. You're sitting across from someone who seems to embody everything you've ever wanted in another human being. Their words are honeyed, their gaze unwavering, their presence magnetic. They listen, not just with their ears, but with an intensity that makes you feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in your life. Every compliment they give feels like a revelation. Every smile ignites something deep within you. And yet, there's something beneath it all, something faintly discordant, like the hum of electricity before a storm. What if I told you that what you're experiencing isn't love? That it's not even attraction, at least, not as most people understand it. What if what you're feeling is the carefully crafted illusion of intimacy, designed not to connect but to consume, to seduce and destroy? Consider this paradox. How can someone make you feel so alive while simultaneously draining the essence of who you are? Why does the person who claims to adore you leave you questioning your worth, doubting your reality, and clinging to scraps of validation like a beggar at their feet? This is no ordinary relationship. It's a psychological game, one where the rules are invisible, the stakes are your soul, and the player on the other side operates by a logic as cold as mathematics. Have you ever wondered why some people seem incapable of genuine connection, yet excel at weaving webs of charm and control? What drives them to seek out vulnerability only to exploit it? Is it nature or nurture? A broken past or innate malice? Or could it be something far darker, a reflection of humanity's own shadow, projected onto those brave enough or foolish enough to look too closely? Pause for a moment. Think about the relationships in your life. Have you ever felt entranced by someone whose attention was intoxicating, only to later realize they were slowly dismantling your sense of self? Perhaps it started with small things, a comment here, a subtle manipulation there. Maybe you dismissed it as harmless quirks or chalked it up to miscommunication. But over time, the cracks began to show. The admiration turned into criticism. The affection morphed into indifference. And suddenly, you found yourself standing alone, wondering how you ended up so far from where you began. But here's the question that haunts us all. Was it them? Or was it you? Were you too trusting? Too eager to believe in the fantasy they spun? Or did they possess a kind of power, a dark psychology, that rendered you powerless against their influence? And what exactly is this dark psychology? Is it merely a set of tactics used by manipulators? Or does it tap into something primal, something universal, lurking in the shadows of human interaction? Could it be that we are all susceptible to its pull, whether as victims or unwitting participants? Picture this scenario. Two people meet under ordinary circumstances. One enters the encounter seeking connection, authenticity, perhaps even love. The other sees an opportunity, an opening to dominate, to reshape reality according to their desires. At first glance, it appears to be a simple mismatch of intentions. But dig deeper, and you'll find layers upon layers of complexity. The seducer doesn't operate randomly. They follow patterns, exploit weaknesses, and play on instincts older than civilization itself. Their methods aren't random, they're calculated, precise, almost artistic in their execution. Now ask yourself, if such individuals exist, and they do, what does that say about the rest of us? Are we mere pawns in their grand design, destined to fall victim to their schemes? Or can we learn to recognize the signs, to resist their allure, and ultimately reclaim our agency? The truth lies somewhere between these extremes, buried beneath centuries of philosophy, psychology, and human experience. It forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about free will, identity, and the very nature of desire. Who are we when stripped of illusions? What remains when the mask falls away? Before we delve further into the mechanics of this dark art, the seduction and destruction wrought by narcissists, I want you to sit with these questions. Let them simmer. Allow yourself to feel the weight of what's at stake. Because understanding this phenomenon isn't just about protecting yourself from harm. It's about uncovering truths about human nature that have been hidden in plain sight. If this exploration resonates with you, if you've ever felt ensnared by someone whose charm concealed cruelty, please take a moment to like and subscribe. By doing so, you join a community dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of the human mind and empowering ourselves against forces that seek to diminish us. Together, we'll journey through the labyrinth of dark psychology, emerging stronger, wiser, and more aware than ever before. Now, Let's venture deeper into the origins of this hidden problem, the psychological and philosophical roots that explain why such dynamics exist and persist. Prepare yourself, because the answers may challenge everything you thought you knew. The hidden problem and its psychological and philosophical roots. To understand the seductive power of narcissists, we must first confront a chilling truth. They are not anomalies. They are not aberrations in the fabric of humanity, but rather reflections, distorted mirrors, of something deeply ingrained within us all. To call them monsters is to deny our own complicity in their creation. For every act of manipulation, every calculated charm, every cold-blooded betrayal, there exists a seed planted long ago by forces far greater than any single individual. Let's begin with this unsettling thought. What if narcissism itself is not a flaw, but an adaptation? What if it arises from the same primal instincts that drive ambition, creativity, and survival? Consider Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, the part of ourselves we repress, deny, or project onto others. The shadow contains everything we deem unacceptable about ourselves: greed, envy, aggression, and yes, even narcissism. When left unexamined, these suppressed traits do not vanish. Instead, they fester, growing stronger until they manifest externally in relationships, institutions, and society at large. Now imagine someone who has fully embraced their shadow, who wears it like armor. This person is no longer burdened by guilt or shame because they have rejected the very notion of moral accountability. In Nietzschean terms, they embody the Übermensch, the overman who transcends conventional morality to create their own values. But here lies the paradox. While Nietzsche envisioned the Übermensch as a figure of self-mastery and authenticity, those who wield dark psychology twist this ideal into its opposite, a hollow shell of dominance without substance, a tyrant masquerading as a god. This brings us to another critical question. Why are we drawn to such individuals despite their toxicity? Why do we mistake their confidence for strength, their charisma for wisdom, and their cruelty for passion? Arthur Schopenhauer offers a clue when he writes of the will, the blind, ceaseless force that drives all life. According to Schopenhauer, human beings are perpetually trapped in the pursuit of desires that can never be fully satisfied. Seduction, then, becomes a form of enslavement, a way for one will to dominate another. The narcissist understands this instinctively. They know how to exploit your hunger for love, validation, purpose, and turn it against you. But let's go deeper still. Aldous Huxley, in his seminal work Brave New World, warns of a future where pleasure replaces truth, where comfort overrides freedom. Narcissists operate on a similar principle. They offer you a counterfeit paradise, a world where your needs are met, but only on their terms. By providing fleeting moments of ecstasy, they keep you tethered to them, unable to see the prison bars disguised as gifts. Jean-Paul Sartre takes this idea further in Being and Nothingness, arguing that hell is other people, not because others are inherently evil, but because they objectify us, reducing us to mere tools for their use. A narcissist does precisely this. They strip away your autonomy, turning you into an extension of themselves. And yet, none of this would matter if society didn't tacitly encourage such behavior. From childhood, we are conditioned to value success over empathy, appearance over substance, conquest over connection. We celebrate leaders who exude confidence, artists who shock and awe, lovers who sweep us off our feet, all while ignoring the collateral damage left in their wake. Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz and author of Man's Search for Meaning, reminds us that meaning cannot be imposed from without, it must come from within. Yet modern culture often prioritizes external validation above inner fulfillment, creating fertile ground for narcissistic tendencies to flourish. Consider also the role of cognitive biases in perpetuating this cycle. Humans are wired to seek patterns, to find coherence in chaos. This tendency makes us vulnerable to manipulation, especially when faced with someone who appears to offer clarity amidst confusion. Confirmation bias leads us to overlook red flags, interpreting ambiguous behaviors through the lens of hope rather than skepticism. The halo effect convinces us that outward charm correlates with inner goodness, even when evidence suggests otherwise. And the sunk cost fallacy keeps us invested in toxic relationships, believing that time spent justifies continued suffering. Philosophically speaking, the problem runs even deeper. Existentialists like Sartre argue that true freedom requires constant vigilance against forces that seek to define us. Yet narcissists thrive by doing exactly that, defining you, controlling you, erasing your boundaries until you no longer recognize yourself. Their methods tap into universal fears: fear of abandonment, fear of insignificance, fear of confronting the void within. These fears make you pliable, willing to sacrifice pieces of yourself in exchange for scraps of affection. So what happens when we normalize, or worse, romanticize, such dynamics? Look around. Our media glorifies anti-heroes, our politics rewards ruthlessness, and our social hierarchies elevate those who climb over others without remorse. Narcissism ceases to be an individual pathology and becomes a collective epidemic, infecting every level of human interaction. It distorts love into possession, admiration into idolatry, and intimacy into performance. Yet beneath all this darkness lies a glimmer of hope. By understanding the roots of this phenomenon, we take the first step toward liberation. We begin to see narcissists not as supernatural predators, but as products of flawed systems and distorted desires. We recognize that their power depends entirely on our willingness to surrender ours. And most importantly, we realize that breaking free requires more than mere resistance. It demands a radical reimagining of what it means to live authentically. As we move forward, prepare to explore the unseen consequences of this hidden problem. How does it shape not only individual lives but entire societies? What silent mechanisms reinforce its grip, ensuring that generation after generation falls prey to its allure? And perhaps most crucially, why does recognizing these patterns feel so urgent, so necessary, as though the survival of our very humanity depends on it? Stay with me, because the answers lie just beyond the horizon. Together, we'll uncover the subtle ways in which dark psychology infiltrates our minds, our cultures, and our souls, and discover how to reclaim what was lost. If this exploration resonates with you, if you sense the gravity of what's at stake, please take a moment to engage with this content. Share it, discuss it, challenge it. Let's build a community committed to exposing the shadows and stepping into the light. Now, let's dive into the next layer of this labyrinth. Prepare yourself, because the consequences of unchecked narcissism are far-reaching, insidious, and devastating. The unseen consequences. What happens when the seduction fades and the destruction begins? At first glance, the answer seems straightforward. Broken hearts, fractured identities, lives left in disarray. But these visible scars are only the surface of a much deeper wound, one that seeps into the subconscious, reshapes perception, and alters the trajectory of entire lives. To grasp the true cost of falling under the spell of a narcissist, we must look beyond the immediate wreckage and examine the silent mechanisms that sustain their influence long after they're gone. Imagine waking up one day to find that the person you once were has vanished. Your confidence, your sense of self-worth, even your memories feel like they belong to someone else. This is not hyperbole. It's a psychological phenomenon known as identity erosion. Narcissists excel at dismantling their victims' core beliefs about themselves, replacing them with narratives designed to serve their agenda. Over time, you begin to doubt your own reality, questioning whether you're too sensitive, too needy, or simply unworthy of love. It's a slow, insidious process, akin to water wearing away stone. By the time you realize what's happening, the foundation of who you are has already been compromised. But here's where it gets darker. This erosion doesn't stop with the individual. It ripples outward, affecting families, friendships, and communities. Think about it. When someone is trapped in a toxic dynamic, their energy becomes consumed by survival. They withdraw from loved ones, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. Friendships fray. Family ties weaken. Even professional relationships suffer as focus shifts inward toward managing the chaos created by the narcissist. The result is a web of collateral damage, extending far beyond the initial victim. On a societal level, the consequences grow even more profound. When narcissistic behavior goes unchecked, it normalizes exploitation, entitlement, and emotional manipulation. Leaders model callousness. Celebrities glorify superficiality. Influencers peddle curated perfection. Slowly but surely, empathy erodes, replaced by transactional exchanges and performative connections. We live in an age where likes substitute for genuine approval, where appearances matter more than authenticity, and where vulnerability is often punished rather than celebrated. These cultural currents don't just reflect narcissism, they amplify it, creating a feedback loop that perpetuates its spread. Neurologically, there's a reason why breaking free feels so impossible. Studies show that prolonged exposure to manipulative dynamics can rewire the brain, triggering patterns similar to those seen in trauma survivors. The constant oscillation between reward, validation, and punishment, rejection, creates a state of hypervigilance, keeping victims trapped in a cycle of anticipation and despair. Dopamine spikes during moments of fleeting affection, while cortisol floods the system during episodes of devaluation. This biochemical roller coaster makes rational decision-making nearly impossible, leaving individuals caught in a paradox. The very thing destroying them also provides temporary relief. And yet, perhaps the most devastating consequence is existential. Victims of narcissistic abuse often describe feeling untethered, as though their place in the world has been erased. Their dreams shrink, their ambitions dim, their sense of purpose dissolves. Why fight for a future when every effort feels futile? Why trust others when betrayal has become the norm? Existential philosophers like Albert Camus might argue that such despair stems from confronting the absurd, the realization that life lacks inherent meaning. But in this case, the absurdity isn't inherent, it's imposed. The narcissist strips away the scaffolding of meaning, leaving behind a void that feels unbearable to face alone. Now consider the broader implications. If enough people succumb to this kind of psychological warfare, what happens to collective progress? What happens to innovation, collaboration, and compassion? Societies thrive on shared values, mutual respect, and a belief in the possibility of growth. When these pillars crumble under the weight of narcissism, the result is stagnation, a culture mired in cynicism, distrust, and apathy. History offers countless examples of civilizations undone by leaders who prioritized ego over ethics, power over principle. Are we destined to repeat these mistakes, or can we learn to recognize the warning signs before it's too late? Here's the uncomfortable truth. The unseen consequences of narcissistic seduction aren't confined to personal tragedies or societal decay. They reach into the very fabric of human consciousness, challenging our understanding of reality itself. When someone consistently gaslights you, denies your experiences, and invalidates your emotions, they're not just attacking your psyche. They're undermining your ability to discern truth from falsehood. This epistemological crisis extends beyond the relationship, coloring how you interpret the world around you. Who can you trust if even your own mind betrays you? Even language becomes weaponized in this context. Words lose their meaning, twisted into tools of control. Promises dissolve into empty platitudes. Apologies ring hollow, devoid of accountability. In such an environment, communication breaks down, leaving both parties stranded in a fog of ambiguity. And without clear communication, there can be no resolution, only endless cycles of confusion and pain. Yet amidst all this devastation, there remains a kernel of hope. Recognizing the unseen consequences is the first step toward reclaiming agency. Understanding how narcissists manipulate emotions, exploit vulnerabilities, and distort reality equips us with the tools to resist their influence. Knowledge becomes armor, awareness becomes strength, and resilience becomes rebellion. But resistance alone isn't enough. To truly break free, we must dismantle the systems that enable narcissistic behavior in the first place. and that requires a radical shift in perspective. As we transition into the next phase of this exploration, prepare yourself for a revelation, a counterintuitive solution that challenges everything you've been taught about power, identity, and freedom. What if the key to escaping the narcissist's grip lies not in fighting back, but in reframing the battle entirely? What if liberation doesn't come from defeating them, but from transforming ourselves? Stay with me, because the answers lie ahead. Together, we'll uncover the path to breaking free, not just from narcissists, but from the forces that allow them to exist. If this journey resonates with you, if you feel the urgency of what's at stake, please share this content, engage with it, and join the conversation. Let's build a movement rooted in truth, courage, and transformation. Now, let's take the next step. Prepare to rebel against the narrative, to reclaim your power, and to rewrite the story of your life. The rebellion, how to break free. What if the chains binding you were never made of steel, but threads spun from your own mind? What if the prison walls confining you were illusions, erected not by the narcissist, but by your willingness to believe in their authority over you? To break free is not merely an act of resistance. It is a revolution, a rebellion against fear, against self-doubt, against the insidious lie that you are powerless. This is where the battle turns inward, where liberation becomes less about confronting the narcissist and more about reclaiming yourself. Let's begin with a radical proposition. Narcissists hold no real power unless we grant it to them. Their strength lies not in their charisma or cruelty, but in our consent to play their game. They thrive on reaction. Your anger fuels their ego. Your despair validates their dominance. Every tear shed, every plea ignored, every moment spent obsessing over their next move feeds their narrative. And so, the first step toward freedom is simple yet profound. Refuse to participate. Withdraw your energy. Starve the beast. But how does one withdraw when the psychological hooks run so deep? The answer begins with awareness. A conscious decision to observe rather than react. Picture this. Instead of lashing out during a confrontation, you pause. You watch the narcissist's tactics unfold like a script you've read 100 times before. Their gaslighting, their guilt-tripping, their grandiose promises, all predictable, all hollow. In that moment of detachment, something extraordinary happens. You realize they are not omnipotent puppeteers pulling your strings. They are actors performing for an audience of one, you. And once you stop applauding, the show loses its allure. This shift in perspective requires a redefinition of power. Society teaches us that power is external, a force wielded through control, manipulation, or dominance. But true power is internal. It resides in your ability to choose how you respond, to define your reality, to create meaning even in the face of chaos. Viktor Frankl, who endured unimaginable suffering in Nazi concentration camps, argued that while we cannot always control our circumstances, we can always control our attitude toward them. Apply this principle to narcissistic abuse. The narcissist may dictate events, but only you decide what those events mean. By reframing the experience as a test of resilience rather than a sentence of victimhood, you reclaim your agency. History offers compelling examples of individuals who broke free from oppressive forces by embracing counterintuitive strategies. Consider Nelson Mandela, imprisoned for 27 years under apartheid. Rather than succumbing to bitterness or hatred, he chose forgiveness, not because his oppressors deserved it, but because carrying resentment would have kept him shackled long after his release. Similarly, breaking free from a narcissist demands letting go, not of justice or accountability, but of the emotional investment that keeps you tethered to their drama. Forgiveness, in this context, is not absolution, it is emancipation. Another powerful tool in the rebellion is cognitive restructuring, the process of dismantling distorted thought patterns and replacing them with healthier alternatives. Cognitive biases like catastrophizing, everything will fall apart without them, or personalization, it's all my fault, keep victims trapped in cycles of despair. Challenging these thoughts involves asking hard questions. Is this belief based on evidence or emotion? Would I say this to a friend in my situation? What would someone who truly loves me advise? Over time, this practice rewires the brain, restoring clarity and confidence. Philosophically speaking, breaking free also entails rejecting dualistic thinking, the false dichotomy between victim and victor. Existentialists like Simone de Beauvoir argue that human beings are perpetually becoming, shaped by choices made in the present. To label oneself solely as a victim is to deny the potential for transformation. Likewise, viewing the narcissist purely as a villain oversimplifies their humanity, however warped it may be. Instead, adopt a stance of radical responsibility, not for their actions, but for your response to them. This mindset shift empowers you to see yourself not as a passive recipient of fate, but as an active participant in your own redemption. Practically, there are steps you can take to fortify your defenses and rebuild your life. First, establish boundaries, not just physical ones, but emotional and energetic barriers that protect your inner world. Boundaries are not acts of aggression. They are declarations of self-respect. When enforced consistently, they send a clear message: I am no longer available for exploitation. Second, cultivate a support network of trusted friends, family members, or therapists who affirm your worth and provide perspective. Narcissists isolate their victims to maintain control. Reconnecting with others disrupts this strategy. Third, invest in activities that reinforce your sense of identity and purpose. Whether it's art, exercise, volunteering, or learning new skills, these pursuits remind you of who you are outside the toxic dynamic. Perhaps most importantly, embrace imperfection. Healing from narcissistic abuse is not linear. There will be setbacks, moments of doubt, flashes of longing for the familiarity of the past. Resist the temptation to interpret these feelings as failure. Growth is messy, nonlinear, and deeply human. As Nietzsche famously wrote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." Each stumble brings you closer to mastery over your own mind. Now imagine this. Months or years down the line, you find yourself sitting across from someone new. Unlike before, you're not searching for validation or clinging to scraps of affection. You're whole, grounded, unshakable. The person across from you senses this completeness and responds accordingly. Why? Because narcissists prey on vulnerability, and you have become invulnerable, not in the sense of being cold or detached, but in the sense of being fully integrated, fiercely authentic. Your light shines brightly, leaving no room for shadows to creep in. As you embark on this journey of rebellion, remember this: the goal is not revenge, nor is it vindication. It is liberation. Liberation from the need to prove yourself, from the fear of abandonment, from the illusion that anyone else holds the keys to your happiness. You are the architect of your destiny, the author of your story, and the pen is now firmly in your hand. Before we reach the ultimate truth, the final revelation that will redefine everything you thought you knew, I urge you to reflect on what has been shared thus far. If this exploration resonates with you, if you feel the stirrings of rebellion within, please engage with this content. Share it, discuss it, challenge it. Let's build a community united by courage, wisdom, and the unwavering belief that freedom is possible. Now, prepare yourself for the culmination of this odyssey. Together, we'll uncover the deepest insight yet, an epiphany that transcends psychology, philosophy, and culture, revealing the essence of what it means to live authentically. Stay with me. The final truth awaits. The ultimate truth, the final, most powerful realization. Now, let us journey to the heart of the matter, the place where all paths converge and all illusions dissolve. Here, at the summit of understanding, lies a revelation so profound that it rewrites not just your relationship with narcissists, but your entire conception of self, others, and existence itself. This is no ordinary insight. It is a paradigm shift, an awakening that transforms pain into purpose, suffering into sovereignty, chaos into clarity. Imagine standing on the edge of an abyss, staring into its infinite depths. For so long, you feared what lurks within: darkness, emptiness, annihilation. But now, as you peer closer, you see something unexpected, a reflection. Not of the narcissist who once consumed you, nor the fractured self you thought you'd lost, but of you, whole, unbroken, infinite. You are not the victim of someone else's cruelty or the casualty of their pathology. You are the creator of your reality, the keeper of your soul, the eternal witness to your own becoming. This is the ultimate truth. The narcissist was never the enemy. They were the mirror. Their seduction, their manipulation, their destruction, it was never about them. It was always about you. About the parts of yourself you had yet to confront, the wounds you hadn't healed, the fears you refused to face. Every moment of entrapment, every pang of betrayal, every tear shed in silence, they were invitations to look deeper, to ask harder questions, to shatter the illusions that kept you small. The narcissist didn't break you. They revealed what was already broken. And in doing so, they gave you the greatest gift of all, the opportunity to rebuild stronger, wiser, freer. Consider this paradox. The very qualities that make narcissists dangerous, their lack of empathy, their insatiable hunger for control, are distortions of traits we all possess. Empathy can be weaponized into indifference, ambition can devolve into greed, charisma can mask cruelty. Narcissism is not a foreign entity invading humanity from without. It is a shadow archetype embedded within us all. To reject it outright is to deny a piece of ourselves, to perpetuate the cycle of fragmentation and projection. True liberation comes not from eradicating the shadow, but from integrating it, transforming its raw energy into fuel for growth. Philosophers have long grappled with this duality. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of uniting conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche to achieve wholeness. Nietzsche wrote of the eternal recurrence, urging individuals to live as though they would repeat their choices endlessly, embracing both light and dark. Even Soren Kierkegaard, wrestling with existential despair, argued that faith requires leaping into uncertainty, not despite fear, but because of it. These thinkers understood that enlightenment arises not from escaping darkness, but from descending into it, confronting it, and emerging transformed. And so, here is the crux of the matter. The narcissist's seduction and subsequent destruction force you to confront your own vulnerabilities, insecurities, and desires. Their actions strip away the layers of pretense, exposing the raw essence beneath. What you do with this exposure determines everything. Will you recoil in shame, reinforcing the belief that you are unworthy? Or will you embrace the revelation, using it as a catalyst for profound transformation? To answer this question, consider the concept of anti-fragility, coined by philosopher Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Unlike fragility, which breaks under pressure, anti-fragility thrives in adversity. Stressors become opportunities for growth, challenges morph into stepping stones, and pain evolves into power. In this framework, the narcissist's abuse ceases to be a source of harm and becomes a crucible for reinvention. Each betrayal teaches resilience. Each moment of gaslighting sharpens discernment. Each act of invalidation strengthens self-trust. You emerge not diminished, but expanded, not shattered, but fortified. But there is another dimension to this realization, one that transcends individual healing and ventures into collective consciousness. By confronting the shadow within yourself, you illuminate the shadows in society. The same forces that enable narcissistic behavior, power imbalances, cultural conditioning, systemic inequality, are mirrored in institutions, governments, and global dynamics. Your personal rebellion becomes part of a larger revolution, a movement toward authenticity, accountability, and interconnectedness. When enough people awaken to their own wholeness, the collective shifts. The narcissistic paradigm collapses, replaced by a new narrative rooted in compassion, equity, and shared humanity. Let us return to the metaphor of the mirror. If the narcissist reflects your inner world, then breaking free is not merely about walking away, it is about changing the reflection. As you heal, grow, and reclaim your agency, the image shifts. The cracks mend, the distortions fade, and what remains is a truer, more radiant version of yourself. This transformation radiates outward, influencing how you interact with others, how you navigate relationships, how you contribute to the world. You cease to be a passive observer of life and become an active participant in its unfolding. Herein lies the poetic beauty of this journey. The very thing that sought to destroy you becomes the instrument of your salvation. Pain becomes wisdom, loss becomes liberation, and the darkest nights give way to the brightest dawns. This is the alchemy of the human spirit, the ability to transmute suffering into strength, chaos into creation, despair into hope. As we bring this exploration to a close, I leave you with one final thought. The ultimate truth is not static. It is dynamic, ever-evolving, infinitely expansive. To live authentically is to embrace this fluidity, to dance with uncertainty, to remain open to discovery. There will always be new mirrors, new reflections, new lessons waiting to guide you further along the path. Trust the process. Trust yourself. If this odyssey has resonated with you, if it has stirred something deep within, I urge you to take action. Share this content, engage with others, continue the conversation. Together, we can build a community dedicated to shedding light on the shadows, fostering growth, and inspiring change. And now, dear reader, I invite you to sit quietly with these revelations. Let them settle like sediment in still water. Feel their weight, their gravity, their promise. Then rise, not as someone who has survived, but as someone who has transcended. For in the end, the greatest rebellion is not against the narcissist, but against the limitations we place upon ourselves. Break those chains, step into the light, and claim the boundless potential that has been yours all along. The journey does not end here. It begins anew, with every breath, every choice, every moment of awakened awareness. Go forth and create your masterpiece.